And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP. We're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is for amazing players to find great games by designers that they can love and help designers find great players who can love their games. We do that through a mix of different things, actual plays, reviews, other stuff like that. You can find a lot of the old stuff that we've done over on our old past, whatever. On our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on Twitch right now, there's a link right down below. You can also follow us wherever you're watching us right now. All these interviews that we do will start out live, or all the content we do starts out live for the most part. If you have a question, a thought, anything you want to share, feel free to share it in the chat wherever you are. But our Prestige Class series is where we sit down with somebody or a couple people in the RPG community to talk about their work and hopefully be able to extract a few lessons from what they're doing and how it might impact what we do at our tables, how we make the community a better place, or the games that we're playing. And today we are sitting down with Ma'at and Fenway to talk about a few different things, but they kind of all center around Jasper Games Day and mental health within the RPG community, specifically some of the work that's happened in collaboration with Jasper's Game Day and the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure League. So I'm super excited to let y'all meet them. I actually just put out the call a little while ago saying like, hey, I love talking I love talking to white dudes. But I would love to also just talk to other people who are some of the best people that I could be talking to. And Ma'at and Fenway were recommended by a number of people and are gracious enough to come on today and talk about the work they're doing. So I am super thrilled y'all are here. Let's start with you, Ma'at. Just go to work across the stream. Tell people who you are, what you do, and where they can find you online.
Thanks. My name is, as you said, Ma'at Crook. And I am a writer and an artist, and also I am a Adventures League admin.
Awesome.
I'm also a little tongue-tied, apparently. I am currently I work as a community manager and sensitivity lead, and doing sensitivity readings and such. I collaborated on a project with Fenway, and I will let Fenway describe why that collaboration happened. But I wrote an adventure in collaboration with Fenway, the American Association of Suicidology, and also D&D Adventures League.
Awesome. And for people who aren't familiar with it, I know that might sound like a weird thing, but we do a lot of indie game design work on our channel, and so we don't always talk about Dungeons and Dragons culture stuff. For people who don't know what the Adventure League is, tell us a little bit about what the Adventure League is, just to give people a sense of that.
Thank you. I actually meant to do that. So I totally appreciate that prompt. D&D Adventures League is D&D's official public organized play. So the cool thing about that is that everyone that runs a Adventures League game and plays an Adventures League game is using the same house rules, which allows us to all have a general understanding of what the rules are. We don't have to worry about them changing in the middle of a game, for example. But the coolest thing is that means that we can create a character and take that same character from one table to another DM, to an event, a convention, a charity event, something like that, and then come back to our regular table and continue to play that same character.
Yeah. Which, I'll be honest, I think there's a ton of people out there who make games of all different sizes who love that idea, that portability of character, the ability to say, hey, we're going to drop people in, drop people out, move over here, move over there. And the other amazing thing that we've talked about a lot for some of the community events we do, these festivals that we're starting to hold in partnership with some other people, is like, how do you create world events that a bunch of people at different tables can play in? And Adventure League does that for Dungeons and Dragons. It's a really, really great thing that I know a lot of people out there love the idea of, whether it's for Dungeons and Dragons specifically or for other systems. But Adventure League does an absolutely phenomenal job of helping tie all those pieces together.
We certainly try. We do have things called epics, and adventures called epics, which is one adventure that multiple tables play. And what happens at one table may affect what happens at the other tables, or cause benefits, or give benefits. It's a really fun experience.
Yeah. It starts to approach some of the things that some of the larger like mega games start to do when you're looking at some of those epic events. Like I said, there's a lot of great experimentation happening in that community that I just would love for more people to be able to check out and to find out more about. So thanks so much for being here with us. I'm super excited to talk about that project as well as some of the others. And let's meet Fenway. Fenway, tell people who you are, what you do, how they can find you online.
Hi, everyone. Like you said, my name is Fenway Jones, also known as Fenway the Teen DM on Twitter and at Jasper's Game Day on all of the social medias. I am the founder of Jasper's Game Day, and for those of you who might not be familiar with what we are a nonprofit organization that raises money for suicide prevention and awareness through all different types of gaming. We just got done with our large yearly event called Jasper's Game Week, and it was a ton of fun. Maat and I and the American Association and of Suicidology and D&D Adventures League all collaborated on the adventure that Maat had mentioned, and we did it so that we could combine Dungeons and Dragons and the talking about mental health. So one of the things that Jasper's is a huge advocate for is reducing the stigma around talking about mental health and suicide prevention in general. And we thought that we wanted to use D&D to kickstart that.
I'm super excited about what Jasper's Game Day has been doing, and I kind of want to start there and then swing over to the project. Like I remember seeing, I feel like last year, like the I am not a critical failure, or you are not a critical failure, which neither am I. Like tagline show up and just thinking like this is such a beautiful expression. I love seeing this, and then like Jasper's Game Day, I feel like has just exploded, and I've just been watching from the outside. So tell people a little bit about how Jasper's Game Day got started and a little bit about what the trajectory of that has been over the last little bit.
Sure. So Jasper's Game Day started, it has a bit of a grim starting. I lost 2 friends to suicide in the span of a couple of months, and I didn't really know what I wanted to be able to do with the feelings that I didn't know how to deal with them after the loss of my friends. And so with the help of my mentor and my community around me, I decided to create Jasper's Game Day and try and help other people in similar situations and people who had lost loved ones, and try and prevent people from losing more loved ones in the future. And so that's how Jasper's Game Day got started. It was going to be a one-time event, one event thing the first year, and then it kind of blew up. And we raised right around $8,000 our first year, and now it's our 4th year, and we will have right around 20 events this year.
I love it. I constantly see people who I love in the community popping up Jasper Game Day events, and it's been absolutely phenomenal to jump in, to be able to contribute, to hear about the different things that have been happening. It's obviously touched a deep thread with a lot of people, and so I'm super excited. We're gonna get into all that, but the place I love to start is just also with people asking them how they got started playing games. Like some people are designing games, some people are managing community, other people are doing different things, but at some point, for the most part, we all sat down and decided, hey, I'm going to try this role playing thing. And so, Fen, would you mind just kind of continuing, like how did you get started playing role playing games?
So I got started playing role-playing games right around 7 years ago. So when I was 11, and my dad actually had been playing with the same group for think it was 30 years. And he was like, well, it's now your turn to get into gaming. And so he actually it's kind of threw me in the deep end as it goes. And he got me involved with their group, and I started playing Pathfinder at first, and then I switched to D&D. And my dad, back when they were a thing, was one of the local coordinators for AL. And he helped kind of get people as game stores, Adventurers League games running, and the explosiveness of that was actually how I started DMing. So
That's awesome. No, I like always love just kind of hearing like what people's experiences with that like are. And is there like a moment like around the table that for you kind of crystallized? And we can come back to this. I'll let you think about it for a second. We'll talk to Maat, but like, what's an experience around you that crystallizes like what your like what you love about sitting down to play role-playing games specifically? Like, has there been a moment at the table for one of your characters, something like that? Get one in your mind. Let's talk to Maat. How did you get started playing role-playing games?
Well, I grew up during the Satanic Panic, and I also was in a tiny, tiny town that did not sell the game at all. I don't know where I would have bought it or seen it. I remember seeing the cartoon and loving it. By the time I got into high school, I did actually have some friends, and I moved to a area where you could purchase the game. And I had two friends whose sister DM'd, and we created characters. And every time I went to visit them, I would ask their sister if she could DM for us. And every time she would be all, maybe next time. That went on for 4 years. So I had lots of characters that were never made it to a table. But that started my love for the game, even though I didn't know what the game was about still. But it captured such fun imagination and creativity just from the character development. So then by the time I got into my 40s, and Critical Role came out, their very first episode, I was so resentful. Like, I was seriously resentful that I had never played D&D before. And so I called up a friend, and I said, Corey, will you please DM for me? And he agreed. And I was hooked, because that night, and so this is going to incorporate both of your questions, Tony.
Yeah.
So that night, I woke up in the middle of the night from such a vivid dream about a world. I was already, from that first game, building a world in my brain in my sleep, and I just started furiously writing everything down. I created a whole world. I created a couple of different stories in the setting. And I also, that was a monthly game that I was doing. And after that first game, I was all, I can't just do this once a month. So I, thank goodness there was the internet by that time, and I found Adventures League games. I found a great community in Portland when I lived there. There is a store there called Guardian Games that had like, I'm not gonna have the numbers exact, but pretty close. There's like 12 tables on their floor, as well as like another like 10 in a bar area and some other private rooms. So there's like maybe 20 tables in this game store. And so that's where I got my start. And I took like, I illustrated my setting. I did stat blocks and everything as best as I could. And I printed it out in a little booklet, and I showed it to the Adventures League organizer there, and she was all, if you like, I think that we could make an Adventures League game out of some of this. Would you like to work with me on that for some of our conventions coming up? And also the DMs Guild, dmsguild.com had just come out, where you can publish your Adventures League, your D&D adventures that you write, and sell them for 50% of the proceeds. And I was all, well, yep.
So you dove head in. You went fast.
I dove head in. And I tell you what, too, there's something. So besides what got me really hooked in the game itself, was that creative burst, the building a community of. There's still people from that Portland store. So that was like 2015. I still know a lot of the people from that I played with in the Portland store.
Yeah, I don't know if Jeff Chatterton is one of them, but Jeff Chatterton definitely said, "Woo, Guardian Games!" whenever you.
Yes, Jeff is definitely one of those people. So that the practicing impromptu skills, practicing all the social skills that or like just about any interaction that we want to get better at, there's ways that we can do that in the game. But then also I got hooked on writing the adventures, because that very first convention that I went to, and every convention since, when I sit at a table to play one of my own games, I listen to all the other tables that are playing that same game, and it is amazing to hear just these ideas that you put out into the world, and that people can take them in all these different new directions and make that story their own. So that got me hooked in writing D&D adventures too.
I love it. I like I said, I love like it's as soon as you sit down to play, like you really are like entering into this process of co-creation with like the GM and with the people who wrote the book, like which is some people's like critique of role-playing games. For me, it's one of the best parts about role-playing games. But I love to always hear when people went from like, yeah, I played a game and then I wrote a game. I wrote a module. That's awesome. Jeff Chatterton also 100% recommended Bleeding Gate series of modules also too.
That was the setting that became an adventure. Those were my very first ones, and I got one of them was nominated for an Emmy as well.
Love it. Fenway, tell us about you. Like, what are some of that? What's that crystalline moment for you of why you love playing games?
I'm not really sure if there's just one. I will say I did meet Jasper, the namesake of my charity, through Dungeons and Dragons. He was actually my dad's best friend's nephew. And so we became pretty much best friends, and anytime that we gamed, our characters were good friends. Like, they were always connected. We went to conventions together and like played a weekly game. And so it was the process of meeting friends and people who you would have a lifelong connection with, and just like the creativity, the like Ma'at said, the impromptu creation, those sorts of things were always super, super intriguing to me. I've always been deemed an imaginative kid ever since I was very, very young. I was an only child up until I was 10. And so I always, created things to play when I was little too. So I've been doing it since I was young.
Awesome. No, I love that. Yeah, I think the other day I was talking to somebody, especially during pandemic. But it's like I do tons of game stuff. I also have another job, and it's always super tempting to focus on just the game stuff, because it's like, hey, I this is never a lonely space for me. Like, this is a space where, like, whether I'm playing, whether we're writing, whether I'm collaborating, I'm working with artists, I have other friends who are looking at my work. It's these constant friendships that you're able to form over the table, but also over the creation of games as well, that is just so uplifting, so exciting. And you hopefully don't feel alone. Obviously, people still oftentimes feel alone within that community, but a lot of the work y'all are doing directly ties into that. How do we use this space, this collaborative space, this community space, to address and improve the mental health and well-being of the community and of individuals? So talk to me a little bit more about that, and then maybe this partnership that y'all have done for this module. Finn, maybe you could lead into that, and then Ma'at pick up a little bit as we get into that module piece. So you had this experience, you had this kind of love of creating collaborative spaces. What are some of the ways that, especially through Jasper's Game Day, but for you also just as an individual, that y'all are really trying to address mental health through this lens of tabletop games?
Yeah, I have been writing adventures for a few years now, since right before I actually started Jasper's. And it's always been something that has been a bit of an outlet for me, a way to improve my own mental health, improve how I'm feeling, how I'm feeling about myself, those sorts of things, as well as running games. I always feel better after that, and that's kind of how D&D incorporated, because gaming has always been my outlet for mental health as well. And so combining writing and gaming to be able to do that was an amazing source for myself. And so that is one of the ways and one of the reasons that I wanted to be able to create a resource for other people to be able to improve their own mental health through gaming and learn more about what it meant, like what mental health is, and how it's more than just I'm feeling anxious today, I'm feeling depressed today. Well, yes, those things are mental health. There is so much more that goes into mental health, and there are so many more signs and resources that are often talked about. And so there's a lot of stigma around talking about it. And so that's why Jaspers and I wanted to start this program of writing adventures, partnering with the American Association of Suicidology, that were healthy and safe to be able to use in the community to educate about mental health.
That's awesome. I love it. And so we have the first one of those. I'm going to try to pop it up on the screen. Let's see if I can do that easily. At least the Dungeon Masters Guild link to it, though I did download the PDF also too, and just started looking through it earlier today. It is absolutely beautiful, and I'm also super excited to just dive into it a little bit more intentionally. But tell us about this kind of initial partnership.
Well, Ma'at and Jaspers and I have all worked together quite a few times previous to this adventure, and they have always been very supportive of what Jaspers does and what I do in general. And so when this idea was first thrown out, I knew that I wanted Ma'at to be one of our first writers, because I think that they are a fantastic writer, and I know that they would be very passionate about doing this safely and correctly.
Awesome. So why don't you pick it up from there? Tell us a little bit about kind of that approach from your side, and about the module also too.
Well, yeah, just like Fenway said, I was super passionate about this project because I did want more players and DMs to have resources available to them on how to play a game with mental health or mental health analog in it, and in a safe and effective way, and where it can address some of the myths. It can hopefully give people tools on how to communicate about mental health in a respectful way, how to portray it. I don't know if Chris Maxwell and I did it correctly. I think down the road we're all learning new things all the time. So down the road, I would be excited to see even more adventures and resources come out for people that is even more respectful or even more clear on how to portray these in the most respectful way as possible. I mean, this is a collaborative game. And so even if you feel one way about mental health or have a certain level of knowledge about mental health, there's always new stuff to learn. And the people coming to your table may not have that same information. They may have experience with mental health, that it relates to trauma. Or maybe they also have a diagnosis, and for example, they're sick of being called, they're super tired of being called crazy, for example, and don't want to play a game where there's vilifying and shaming language in it, or portrayals in it. And even if the person at the table doesn't, they may have family members and friends who are going through a experience of crisis, and it may be difficult to see some of the tropes that we have in our games. And it's not just RPGs. It's not just in RPGs. It's in all media.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's a huge thing. And one of the things that struck me immediately when I started reading through it this afternoon was there is and it's, I think it's common in other modules, but there's a lot more attention given to it in this one. Like, first of all, it opens with a great safety toolkit. Like, Adventure League is good about providing resources for safe and great play around a table.
We're trying to get even better at it.
Yeah, we're huge advocates for safety tools here on the channel. We do 3 layers of safety conversations because we stream. We do a pre one where, like, beforehand we just let people know, let the GM know if you have one, just via chat, and then before we stream we remind everybody, talk about them just privately with each other, and then we do it on stream because we think that conversation is good to have publicly also, but it gives people numerous options to say things in various levels of privacy before we're just like, hey, on a stream, and all of a sudden I have to deal with all these things live. There's a lot that goes into that. But you do a great job, and then you do a specific job of addressing the mental health components up front, so people do have a clear understanding of what they're getting into, what some of the triggers might be in those places, which helps people have that conversation in a really healthy way, because things are collaborative. It can be really unhealthy to say we're not going to address something. It might be more healthy to say, how are we going to address that thing when it comes up within a conversation, which could be mental health or could be any other number of things. It's very common that, we might create a veil in one of our games around, hey, we only want to look at racism as a force to be overthrown and overcome, not as a casual trope that we're just going to throw into the middle of a game. And whether it comes up in that game or not is a question, but if it does, we're always addressing it through that lens. And so having those nuanced conversations is really helpful. There's a lot of tools just baked into the module for that. But you mentioned it's a growing and learning process for everybody. So I'd love to hear from you, Mott, and from you, Fenway. Like, what are some of the things as y'all were going through writing this kind of initial adventure in this project that y'all learned about how to do this? Like, if you had to think of maybe 1 or 2 examples of whether it's something about mental health, whether it's about how you approached writing it into a module, what are some of the things that were part of the learning process for you?
Chris Maxwell is the co-creator for this project. He works at the American Association for Suicidology, and I learned like just about everything from it. Even if there were things that, like, I have a the number is escaping me, like a 12 or 15 year work history in social work, where I was a prevention educator. I was an advocate for people who were sexually assaulted or in an abusive relationship. and I would, and as a prevention educator, I would go out to schools and correctional facilities, and I would do groups. I also managed and organized a bunch of trainings. Like every week or every other week, I was organizing a training, which also meant that I was there at a training. And there's a lot of mental health is a big component of that. That is a huge topic that we would come to a lot, even with that history. And even with my own history as someone with PTSD and the things I've learned, sitting down and writing an adventure to be able to communicate some of that stuff to someone else and to unlearn some of the myths and the shaming and vilifying language or the not so helpful ways to talk about suicide. Yeah, it's an ongoing, lifelong thing to learn about. So one of the things that I learned about from both Chris and Fenway is the phrase that we commonly use in our society, commit suicide, is can be blaming and shaming and vilifying because you've sinned, you've committed like the sin of committing suicide. And so it's rather than saying that phrase, that dying by suicide would be more specific and also does not have shame attached to it.
Right. Yeah. The term commit oftentimes carries a level of agency that is different for different people in different mental health situations also too. And there's not a level of compassion that oftentimes accompanies that. And so that can be really challenging. That's a huge one. Fenway, how about you? Any, like, as y'all were going through this process, first of all, what was your role in the process? I know you said you went to Ma'at and asked that, hey, we want to collaborate on this. We want to do that. What did that process look like on your side?
So my side of things was really giving Ma'at the resource of Chris Maxwell and kind of connecting them, and then kind of overseeing, giving deadlines, kind of talking about when we were going to premiere it. I was not so much in on the writing process of things because I wanted to give Ma'at and Chris the creative side of things, but I definitely was there for the playtesting and the afterwards stuff of getting it onto the DMs Guild, and we actually just I can't think of the word, submitted it for the NE. Yeah, that's what we did. So that was really exciting too. I will say, like Ma'at said, just kind of a little bit of a insight that I have. Something that I was told recently by another mental health professional is a good way to look at it is no one commits cancer. No one commits dying from a physical illness. Like, that's not how they talk about dying from physical illnesses. So one of the ways that we're trying to combat the stigma around mental health is looking at it like a physical illness. Obviously it doesn't have the same effects, but it does have, it shouldn't have more stigma around it than physical illnesses do.
Yeah. No, I have a background in ministry work, so we do a lot of frontline mental health stuff, oftentimes handing people over or to like qualified professionals, health people, social services, and it is challenging lots of times to get people to understand, like, we are talking about a very like real form of illness, whether you can see it or not, that also is not meant to be like we would never approach somebody with cancer in the way we approach mental health issues. We would never approach somebody who had, a broken leg in the way we might approach somebody who has a temporary bout of depression, right? Lots of times it's like, well, just get over it, just move beyond it, rather than taking it as a serious medical issue like it is. And we've almost trained our culture to dismiss mental health issues in a very different way than we ever would physical or other types of health issues. And so I think games are always a great way to explore a lot of those things within safe boundaries. But the language issues are things that people still like. Even as I'm saying things out loud right now, I'm just like, wait, no, how exactly do I want to say this? Is always running in the back of my head, which is a question I hope I'm always asking myself. But like really is something that challenges a lot of people, and even that challenging can then lead to weird cultures of silence, right? Like around it, like not knowing how to talk about a thing can make us just not talk about it, rather than confronting our own discomfort around saying, how do I best talk about this? And so I love that y'all took this on. Ma, it looks like you want to say something.
What you were saying about the erasure of mental health. That there are times when you have a pregame discussion or a session 0 that someone at the table may say, I'm having a really hard time with X, so I'd like us not to have that in the game at all. And sometimes that might be about mental health. Particularly in any RPG that has insanity or madness in it. They may request that we not play a game with those aspects in it. But then there's other times when someone does feel up to discussing this stuff in a more thoughtful way, and so that it's not erased. Because the games that we play, it makes total sense that mental health is going to be affected at some point, and maybe often. So it makes sense to have that in the games, and to figure out a way to do it in a respectful way, without the shame and the stigma.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's important, like something for GMs to think about, and actually players, I would say too, any member of the RPG community. Like most major cities have a mental health first aid course. It's offered somewhere publicly. Depends on what state you're in, how available they are. But like even knowing some of those things, the ability to read your players at the table, know what their comfort level is, or even as you're doing things like, hey, we're doing pregame work on this. If every week you have a player who's showing up who is talking about their mental health as a Lines Veil session 0 type thing, and no one is ever following up with them in community, because it can be really hard to talk about around how can I love you, I love seeing you here every week, like do you have support? If not, how can I support you? Or even if you do, like is there a way I can support you? And they may say, oh, like I really don't want to bring that here. That's fine, like that's absolutely fine. Ignoring it consistently, I would say, is not. So that may not be a thing, but like educating yourself as a GM or as a fellow player around some of the basics of mental health can be really helpful in doing and leading into some of that. And I would even say modules like this can be a place to safely explore that if everybody in the table is agreeing to that, which should not be a replacement for treatment, other systems of support, anything else, but is a great way to start that conversation for everyone at the table, which if everybody's in a good, like everybody has mental health, like, I mean, period, even if you're like, I don't have any sort of mental health issues, like we still all have mental health. And so the reality is like being aware of how we process through these things can be helpful for everyone, and just creates a better situation when we have those natural moments for human check-in. Like I'm always telling our players for our streams, like you're a person first. So if you need to eat, if you didn't get enough sleep the night before, if you need to call off 10 minutes before a stream, like I care more about you as a person. And that is your physical and mental well-being. Like if you just can't emotionally pull yourself to do it, like I'm always going to encourage you to be a part of it and play, but like I'm never going to pressure you into doing it if you're not at a place to do it. I want you to know that's a clear line for me that I'm not going to cross. And so those things should matter as much at our tables week to week as they do on a stream or something else. So I absolutely love the fact that this is a way that we're able to take that conversation and put it into the game and say, hey, here might be a safe space for us to talk about it. Are there, my other question is, are there tools for decompression after play within the module?
No. That's one of the things that can be added to one of the future adventures.
Which is not I was just curious, like that's
no,
And so, because even like Blood Feud, which is a game that explores like toxic masculinity and how it affects us. It's a Viking role playing game. A huge part of it is what's the decompression afterwards. What was our experience playing this game? How's that impacted us? It might be just an interesting place to even look at some template questions, though I'm sure you'll have plenty of resources to draw from. And is obviously addressing a very specific issue. But like for me, like that's another, like, safety tools are meant to be ongoing living, documents, toolkits for play. Mm-hmm. And having like check-in questions, other things like that, things that you can do at the end of a session, end of a scenario, are always really helpful. I'm a big fan of the rituals of play, so it's one of the reasons I immediately kind of.
I'm so glad you said it.
So, but no, I think it's great. If anybody's watching there right now, you have questions about the module itself, about Jasper's Game Day, about Adventure League, about anything we're talking about, feel free to drop them in chat wherever you are. Would love to hear more from y'all instead of just me asking a bunch of questions. We've got just a few more minutes that we're going to be going, but would love to bring your questions to the forefront. For people who may be wondering, like obviously the module addresses mental health. What is the module actually about? Like, what's the scenario? I mean, no, you don't have to give spoilers or anything like that, but what's the general premise for what people can expect?
It's set in Icewind Dale, in a setting in Icewind Dale, and it's intended to be inserted in the middle of the adventure that you're already playing. Maybe you've been starting to play through the book or some of the Adventures League modules. And so you insert this in at any time, tier 1, 2, or 3. And so your characters meet some of the townsfolk that they've already met before. Or it is written as well so that this can be their first time happening and coming upon this setting. But you meet these NPCs, and they are having they're not acting their normal selves, and so you're as a character, you're coming in and you can give them the help that they're asking for, which is something that I really liked that you said, Tony, that when you check in with your players, asking them how to help, asking them what help they need rather than assuming the help that they need. So you can, as a character, you can help these NPCs. You can give them the help that they ask and discover what it is that is affecting them.
That's awesome. No, like I said, I think it's always like, there are so many modules out there, and I would also say having like just my quick look at it. If somebody's out there and they're thinking like, I don't play 5th edition because I know our audience plays a lot of different systems. It would be very transferable to any D20 system and pretty portable to anything else. The scenarios are really well written. The characters' motivations are really, really clearly laid out in the book. I think a lot of the stuff that we see for Adventure League, if you're playing it, any D20 system especially, but most other systems can be easily ported from 5th edition. And so I would really encourage people to go check it out. Like I said, we dropped the link in there. But like I said, it's an initial project. I'm really excited about it. What are some of the plans looking forward with these types of modules? Like, you named this as a learning experience, and not like we're going to have one every month or whatever. There's not a need for a crazy production schedule. But I'm curious, like, what has the response been, and how, like, what are we planning going forward, kind of in this realm of creation for adventures?
Well, I will say that at least on my end, the response has been very ecstatic. People have been very happy that we're using the gaming space to further our message of mental health destigmatizing mental health and talking about it. And the plan moving forward, I'm not sure we have like a 5-point plan or anything like that, but the idea is to get more authors involved. We already have a few people from the American Association of Suicidology who are interested in being a part of it, and so we're just looking for authors who we think would be the best fit for this project, and are looking to do a few more in the future.
Awesome. Very cool. How about on your side? What are some of your hopes for the future of this?
I'm going to keep on writing, and and I also want to keep in mind, we talked earlier about how it sounds like you're a little bit more extroverted than me, maybe. Are you an introvert or an extrovert, Tony?
So from an energy standpoint, I'm an introvert. I am what some people refer to as an omnivert, or what I actually am is an extroverted introvert. So I am a gregarious, outgoing person, and it exhausts me to be around people. And so, which oftentimes will push me into very weird mental health spaces at the end of a long or big event. So I'm the last person to leave the con, and the person who collapses from mental exhaustion after they're done.
Awesome. I am clearly an introvert, and so collaborating can sometimes be scary and take a lot of energy, but the rewards are just, I can't even count the rewards for working with Chris Maxwell on this. And I'm passionate about these kinds of topics. I'm passionate about helping me and other people play this fun game in a way that's more fun. And part of that is making sure that it's safe. And so I just my plan is to keep on writing and keep on collaborating, as particularly at topics that I really could use the help, even if I think that I don't need it that much.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I am super excited. I'll tell people again where they can find you online if they want to be able to find you.
I'm on Twitter at Maatcrook, MAATCROOK. And you can find my adventures on dmsguild.com. Just search my name.
Awesome. And then Fenway, tell us a little bit. I know that there's always new stuff coming up with Jasper's Game Day. I'm always super thrilled to see it. There's so many members of our community who I love, who I know have hosted different events, other stuff like that. But tell us a little bit about what's going to be going on with Jasper's Game Day in the near future, and where people can find more information about that online.
So right now, we don't have any more streaming events planned. We're actually looking at the conventions going forward, which is kind of a scary thought right now. But we're going to be doing both the online and in-person portions of the events for Phoenix Con, Gen Con, Origins, and Gamehole. And there will probably be more, but those are the ones that we have planned right now, and we will be a part of as much of those events as we are able to, doing rerolls, silent auctions, raffles, all of those different sorts of things, and I am super duper excited for it.
Awesome. I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for everything Jasper's Game Day is doing, for starting that conversation, for starting this conversation. It's always great to see people who are driving us to be if it means, if being a TTRPG family is going to mean more than a hashtag, it takes people actually investing in the good of the community. And I just love what Jasper's is doing. And I love that they've been able to partner with Adventure League and the DMs Guild to make a lot of different things happen, and more coming in the future. If people want to find you online, what's the best place to do that?
My Twitter would definitely be the best place to find me. That's at Fenway Teen DM, and or at Jasper's Game Day on all of the social medias. I also have my link tree in my profile of my Twitter, but that's just link tr.ee/Fenway.Jones. And that has all of my different projects and things going on. I also have a Patreon, which I'm starting for running games. So that's super exciting too.
Awesome.
That's exciting.
And we have a lot of things in the chat from, I'm going to butcher this name, Menachem. Cohen says, this is awesome. Thanks so much. Lots of geeky therapists in the geek therapy community. List of Facebook community there. It's facebook.com/geek therapy. So if you were looking for more collaborators, you can find them there. But also, if you're a therapist out there who's watching this later and you're looking for a community, there's one for you. Also, Dice Ghost on Twitch says, just wanted to say thank you for sharing your insights and for your hard work supporting the community. So thank you all so much. By the way, here on Plus One EXP, we don't think that content creators or small indie designers who don't have a budget should be limited in being able to market their games to people. If you want to help support our channel, you can become a content champion. You can go to ko-fi.com/plus1exp to support us there. We have some giveaways and other stuff coming up, as well as putting our games up there digitally when they come for people who are supporting us. We're just getting that started, but if you want to go and support us at any level, I pay an editor and a graphic designer out of pocket. They're two phenomenal collaborators who I get to work with on a regular basis, but I would love to be able to sustain that indefinitely into the future, or pay them more. So you're actually helping support our team and helps us support creators when you do that. Also, tomorrow, I'll have 2 streams. One will be our backer quest, talking about all the great Kickstarters that have launched in the last 2 weeks. But that'll be a little bit early because at 3 p.m. on Wednesdays in June, we'll be playing Down We Go, which is a OSR minimalist system. The rules all fit on a half of an A5 sheet of paper. So it's basically a half sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper for the player. And we're printing an expanded version of that. It'll be some dungeons, a mega dungeon, a city, and kind of economy skill. It'll be about a 20-page book, but it'll have this, it has this phenomenal OSR flavor. We've been huge fans of Marcus since Marcus released Down We Go a while ago, and are super excited to work with him. He's a Swedish RPG designer, so we are going to be publicly playtesting all the city materials and a mega dungeon that Marcus has put together. We've just brought in a few more amazing collaborators on that project. We'll do a print in August. It'll be a Kickstarter, but not a high-stakes one. We're going to print it. We're just going to use that, to let people know we're doing it. But if you want to see the system in action, if you want to check it out, come back tomorrow at 3 p.m. to check that out. That'll be all the Wednesdays during June. But Ma'at and Fenway, again, thank y'all so much for being here on stream with us. It's been such an honor to have both of you here. I appreciate your work so much. This has been Prestige Class with Ma'at and Fenway, and until next time, class is dismissed.